Everybody remembers the scene, the absolute terrifying climax of James Cameron's dynamic and tragic Titanic. The ship is vertical. The screaming crowds have fallen away into the freezing abyss. And there, at the very peak of the stern, are Jack and Rose clinging to the railing, suspended over a terrifying drop of 100 feet. But in that exact same scene, right next to Leonardo DiCaprio, is another man. A man in a white baker's uniform, with glasses and an expression that defies all logic. He isn't screaming. He isn't panicked. He is calmly taking a drink from a small metal flask. This isn't just a background extra. That man is Charles Jochen, the Titanic's chief baker. And while Jack Dawson, the cultural icon of willpower, tragically froze to death minutes later, Charles Jochen did the unthinkable. He didn't just survive. He rode that stern section all the way down. He simply stepped off into the icy water without, according to him, getting his hair wet. And then, in water that killed most people in minutes, Charles Jochen treaded water for over 2 hours. How did a simple baker survive the physics of the Titanic's final plunge? Was he a hero, a lucky drunk, or was he truly the real-life Jack? If you want to uncover the darkest and most incredible survival stories in history, hit the subscribe button and join the Discovery Vault right now. The truth behind the baker's miracle starts immediately. To understand the almost supernatural survival of Charles Jochen, we must first understand the man himself. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a seasoned combat sailor. He was a baker. Born in Liverpool in 1878, Jochen had made his living on the water for most of his adult life, serving on multiple White Star Line vessels, including Titanic's massive sister ship, the Olympic. By April of 1912, the 33-year-old held the immense responsibility of managing the entire bakery department on the world's most luxurious ocean liner. On the night of April 14th, Jochen was off duty, resting in his quarters. He was fast asleep when the iceberg tore through the starboard hull. According to his later testimony, the collision was so subtle deep within the ship that he didn't even feel the impact. But Jochen was a man of strict discipline. When the commotion finally woke him, and word spread that officers were uncovering the lifeboats, he didn't panic. He understood the grim reality of the situation and recognized his duty. He didn't run to the upper decks to save himself. He ran down into the belly of the ship, straight to his bakery. He quickly organized his team of 13 bakers and personally directed them to carry over 50 heavy loaves of fresh bread up to the boat deck to provision the lifeboats. It was a vital, heroic act of foresight that would sustain the freezing survivors later that night. But as he watched the women and children boarding, Jochen knew the terrifying truth of his reality. He was a crew member. His name was not on any list for a seat in those boats. He was going to have to face the Atlantic. While hundreds of passengers wandered the upper decks in confused terror, Chief Baker Charles Jochen was executing a meticulous plan in the darkness. After ensuring the emergency bread supply was distributed, he returned to the boat deck. The situation was escalating rapidly. The Titanic was noticeably listing to port, and the icy fingers of the Atlantic were reaching higher up the hull. Jochen was assigned to command lifeboat number 10, located on the port side. Under the weak glow of the deck lights, he began the grueling task of loading passengers. But he didn't just direct traffic. Jochen personally handed women and children into the fragile boat, often having to physically use his strength to calm them and guide them into the safety of the gunnels. But when boat number 10 was fully loaded and ready to be lowered, a curious thing happened. Jochen did not get in. As the officer in charge, it was his spot to take, but he refused. According to his later testimony, his logic was simple, terrifyingly calm. I felt that if I went, it would set a bad example. He chose to stay. He chose to face the abyss. This decision, however heroic, carried a terrifying price tag. He was now a man alone on a doomed vessel, with the list growing steeper by the minute and the water temperature dropping toward its fatal 2 degrees below freezing. This is where Jachen's story takes its most infamous and debatable turn. Feeling his duties were complete and accepting his fate, Jachen made a choice. He retreated to his cabin. Deep inside the listing ship, in a room that was rapidly becoming a submerged tomb, Jachen sat down and calmly, purposefully began to consume alcohol. He did not drink to get drunk. He did not drink in a panic. He drank, according to his perspective, to steel his nerves against the cold, to find the liquid courage required to face an agonizing death. For the next hour, as the panic on deck turned into chaotic slaughter, Jachen sat in the relative peace of his cabin, waiting for the ocean to come for him. He was deep inside the structure when he felt a shift, a violent, sickening groan from the steel. He knew the end was near. He put his flask away, put his jacket on, and began the climb back to the boat deck. But by now, it was no longer a deck. It was a chaotic slide toward the sea. It is now past 2:10 a.m. The Titanic has less than 10 minutes to live. The forward well deck is underwater. The grand staircase is a waterfall. The iconic, terrifying sight of the stern section, rising toward the heavens, is no longer a movie scene. It is happening right in front of Charles Jochen. Jochen finds himself among a desperate mass of over 1,500 people, trapped in the stern, sliding and clinging to anything as the angle becomes impossible. It is the real-life version of that cinematic nightmare. People are falling, screaming, and being crushed by the breaking machinery. But Jochen isn't among the screamers. His perspective is still hauntingly calm. Perhaps it was the alcohol, or perhaps a unique, resilient willpower. But Jachen decides he will not die like this. He will not fall. As the angle increases to vertical, Jachen maneuvers himself. He climbs over the railing on the starboard side, the exact same spot where, decades later, a fictional Jack Dawson and Rose DeWitt Bukater would cling for life in Hollywood's calculated and strange depiction of this tragedy. While Rose screamed, Jachen waited. While Jack struggled, Jachen simply clambered onto the outside of the hull, standing on the plating that was moments before underwater. As the ship split in two, a violent, deafening explosion of steel and screams. Jachen rides the final plunge. He is not thrown, he does not jump. He stands, holding the very tip of the stern as the unsinkable ship simply, methodically, slides into the black Atlantic. According to his testimony, as the ship disappeared beneath him, he didn't even get his hair wet. He just stepped off into the 28-degree water. A perfect final plunge. The Titanic is gone. Where the largest moving object ever built by human hands had just been, there is now only a flat, black ocean under a freezing, star-filled sky. And then, the sound begins. For the survivors sitting safely in the lifeboats, it was a sound that would haunt their nightmares until the day they died. It was the agonizing cacophony of over 1,500 people drowning and freezing to death in the pitch black. But Charles Jochen wasn't listening from a lifeboat. He was in the water with them. When Jochen stepped off the stern, he entered an environment that is violently hostile to human biology. The water of the North Atlantic that night was approximately 28 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 2 degrees Celsius. It was literally colder than freezing, kept liquid only by its salt content. When a human body hits water that cold, a terrifying physiological reaction occurs called cold shock. The blood vessels in the skin instantly contract. The victim gasps uncontrollably, often inhaling seawater and drowning in the first 60 seconds. If they survive the initial shock, the intense cold triggers a massive spike in heart rate and blood pressure, often leading to immediate cardiac arrest. For those who survive the first few minutes, severe hypothermia sets in. The body sacrifices the limbs to keep the vital organs warm. Hands and feet go numb, making swimming impossible. Within 15 to 30 minutes, the core temperature drops fatally. Unconsciousness and then death are absolute medical certainties. This was the brutal reality for almost everyone in the water that night. But not for Charles Joughin. He didn't suffer a heart attack. He didn't gasp and drown. According to his own testimony, he simply began to tread water. He paddled in the freezing darkness, keeping his head above the surface. He swam away from the screaming mass of dying people, seeking isolation so he wouldn't be dragged under by desperate, panicking hands. For over 2 hours, while the voices around him slowly faded into a horrifying, permanent silence, the baker kept swimming. How is this medically possible? For decades, historians and scientists have pointed to the alcohol Joughin consumed in his cabin, the liquid courage. But here is the paradox, the chilling medical truth. Science tells us that alcohol is the worst possible thing you can consume before entering freezing water. Alcohol is a vasodilator. It opens up your blood vessels, bringing warm blood to the surface of your skin. It makes you feel warm, but it actually causes your body to lose its core heat significantly faster. Biologically speaking, the whiskey should have killed Charles Joughin quicker than anyone else. Yet, he survived. Some modern medical experts theorize that the alcohol may have suppressed his panic response, preventing the initial, fatal, cold shock and the hyperventilation that drowned so many others. Because he was completely calm, he conserved his energy. His mind defeated the physiological panic of his body. As the hours dragged on, the absolute limit of human endurance was reached. The sky began to lighten. Dawn was approaching. Joughin was still treading water, surrounded by floating debris and the frozen bodies of his fellow crew members. And then, as the first gray light broke over the Atlantic, he saw something in the distance. It was the overturned hull of collapsible lifeboat B. Using the very last reserves of energy in his freezing muscles, Charles Joughin began to swim toward it. It took every ounce of his remaining willpower, but Joughin finally reached the dark shape in the water. As the first gray light of dawn broke over the freezing graveyard of the North Atlantic, the terrifying reality of his sanctuary became clear. It was collapsible lifeboat B, but it wasn't floating upright. It was completely overturned. Clinging to its slippery, freezing hull were over 20 desperate men, including Second Officer Charles Lightoller. They were standing on the bottom of the boat, carefully shifting their weight in unison to keep it from sinking beneath the surface. Joughin swam up to them, his body pushed to the absolute limits of human biology. But when he reached the overturned wood, he faced another brutal reality. There was no room. If he tried to pull himself up, his weight would capsize the precarious raft, dooming everyone on board. So, in an act of incredible composure, Joughin didn't fight them. He didn't panic or try to pull another man down to save himself. Instead, a cook named John Maynard, who recognized the chief baker, reached down and grabbed Joughin's hand. For the next agonizing stretch of time, Charles Joughin remained in the freezing water, simply holding onto Maynard's hand, his lower body dangling in the deadly abyss. He waited patiently, floating in the 28-degree ocean, until another lifeboat, boat number 12 finally rowed over to relieve the sinking collapsible. It was only then, as the sun fully rose and the rescue ship RMS Carpathia appeared on the horizon, that Charles Jogan was pulled from the water. He had been immersed in the freezing Atlantic for over 2 hours. When he was finally hauled into the lifeboat, he didn't require resuscitation. He was severely cold and his feet were heavily swollen. But incredibly, he was fully conscious and speaking normally. By the time he climbed the ladders onto the deck of the Carpathia, he was walking on his own 2 feet. It is a survival story that continues to baffle medical experts today. How did a 33-year-old baker survive a freezing ocean that killed over 1,500 people, many of them younger and physically stronger than him? Some attribute it to the alcohol. Some attribute it to the fact that he stayed out of the initial panic, conserving his energy and avoiding the deadly physiological shock. But perhaps the greatest factor was his mind. From the moment the ship struck the iceberg, Charles Jogan accepted his reality. He did his duty, he prepared himself, and he simply refused to surrender to fear. In James Cameron's legendary film, Jack Dawson is the ultimate symbol of tragic romance and sacrifice, freezing to death in minutes. But history provides us with a different kind of legend. Charles Jogan was the real-life Jack. Not a romantic cinematic hero, but an ordinary baker who faced the deadliest night in maritime history with a flask of whiskey, unwavering calm, and an unbreakable will to live. He proved that sometimes the gritty truth of history is far more astonishing than fiction. What do you think was the true secret to Charles Jogan's impossible survival? Was it the alcohol, his incredibly calm state of mind, or sheer biological luck? Share your perspective in the comments below. If you appreciate deep dives into history's most incredible mysteries and stories of human survival, please consider subscribing to the Discovery Vault. We release new, meticulously researched case files every week. Thank you for exploring with us, and we will see you in the next file.